All right, now we've covered how to raise money and how to manage it. Now it's time to look at the tools and technologies that are kind of reshaping the game altogether. So please help me welcome our last three panelists of the day. Peter Hafez, Chief Data Scientist at Ravenpack, Ivan Suhinin, co-founder of W Cards and Fintech Advisor, and Vicente Ortiz, Legal Advisor to Web3 and Fintech Ventures. We're just going to change the slide. Perfect. We're all sat in the right position. Now, to start off this last session, I want to ask everyone, what's one major shift you've seen in how startups approach financial operations or technology in the last few years, specifically with how technology is evolving? So, Peter, why don't we start with you?
I would say, you always talk about, or there's a lot of talk about how you can start a business today with just one person and AI technology. I think there's been a lot of new technologies come out in the last couple of years that has really empowered individuals to become more efficient. Whether you really are at a stage yet where you can just start as one person and build a unicorn, that might be a little optimistic, but I think there's a lot of Gen AI tools that have really empowered people to become more efficient.
Yeah, I think, I was talking to someone in the AI field last year, and he said that he thinks the next decade is going to be the most productive in human history because of all the AI tools that we have. Ivan, what do you think?
One. Okay. Yeah. Hey everyone. Thanks, Amit, for having me here. Just a bit of context from where I'm coming from, and I've spent past 12 years in early stage startups. So when they say ERP, this is where I live, and I've been focused on fintech. So I'm more from engineering background, so my answers might be a bit more engineering. So from my perspective, looking at how fintech has been developing, so we started from extremely bundled solutions. So when you needed to open a company, you went to the bank, you got your account, it was coming with POS terminals, and everything was in one place, and you had no chance to replace any bit of that because it was so tightly integrated. And what happened is, though, the past, let's say, 10 or something years, financial technology, fintech companies evolved, and they started attacking specific parts of this bundled proposition, essentially unbundling what's being offered. And for me, this is the major shift, as now, when there is kind of regulatory sandbox and opportunity, companies are coming in there, dismantling what banks have been building. So now we are in this world of unbundled finance, and it's like, IKEA finance in a way. You come and there are 20 chairs. They all allow you to sit, but there are so many prices and forms and shapes and everything. So I think that's the major one. The next one that will be is rebundling. So some companies claim to be rebundling, already rebundled, but I think the real one will happen when AI will evolve, which is happening really, really soon. So the challenge in front of young entrepreneurs and startup founders is that when they come to the market, there are just too many tools to pick up from. So that's both good and bad. But yeah, we'll explore it later, I guess. Thanks.
Vicente?
Yeah, I fully agree. Startup doesn't just need financial tools; they need financial infrastructure. No? What I see in my sector, crypto, Web3, and all the stuff, is what I see a lot of companies already and startups using stable coins as infrastructure, a global payments for that is going to be massive, big narrative, 2000, big time. Want to see payrolls. I see also startups using Bitcoin as a store of value, real store of value, for everything. And also tokenization probably is going to be another big narrative, just a way just to do funding, That is what I see.
And from a more legal perspective, what regulatory or compliance challenges do you think startups should keep in mind when adopting more fintech and crypto-based financial tools or infrastructure?
First of all, compliance is not your enemy. It could be your launchpad. I think I agree that you need a balance between growth and compliance. but there is a vast regulation about, PS2, all the MiCA, all that. However, from my perspective, especially when you are pitching the investor, I already see, or I see many times that they even see first if you are compliant, you have the license before even to see your metric. I think how is so critical.
Yeah, my cousin works as a compliance manager, and she always jokes that the best sign that she's good at her job is if she has nothing to do, because everything is working. Peter, you've worked extensively on AI-powered infrastructure. Where do you see the biggest opportunities for startups to leverage AI and machine learning in building scalable real-time financial systems, maybe when it comes to financial workflow automation?
Yeah, I mean, I should probably also give a little bit of a context of where we're coming from and also where we then see the opportunities lie. I mean, we have been in the space of natural language processing for the last 20 years, helping financial investors. So
before it was cool.
Yeah, before it was cool. I felt it was cool already 20 years ago, right? But sort of second wave now, I would say. But we have sort of been helping financial firms, hedge funds, asset managers, and so on, and mostly on the quant side, so where there would be a machine on the other side, to automate their processes in consuming textual content, news, earnings call transcripts, filings, and so on. And we have always been working with on the quant side more with data scientists and so on. But what we're seeing now, and I think where there's a lot of opportunities, is that you have sort of that second wave of language models. And you refer to them today as large language models. Other people refer to them as generative AI. That's where you have ChatGPT and actually the GPT models behind the ChatGPT and Llama and all the other ones that are available. I mean, they have really sort of given you an opportunity to do a lot of cool stuff with much less effort, much easier out of the box. So you don't necessarily have to be deep NLP, natural language processing experts, in order to do some cool stuff using textual content or pictures even now that we are multimodal. So I think there are some real opportunities in taking advantage of generative AI and combining that with domain expertise. So breaking down the different workflows that financial institutions, for instance, or companies care about, and then trying to automate. But you have to also, at the same time, when you work with these models, they are super powerful, but you also need to understand or not be caught up in the hype of generative AI and really see what are they good at and what are they not good at, and understanding exactly where the failure points are and how precise are the answers. Are you operating in a space where precision is key? We get to compliance again, right? Where in finance space, for instance, you have to have very precise answers. So you have to be very careful about how you use it, especially if you're building multi-layer systems that use LLMs everywhere, then precision goes down really, really quickly. So be careful, but it's super empowering, I would say.
Yeah. And Ivan, in your work, from your experience, where do you think automation works well in startups when it comes to finance and operations? And where do you think it still requires more human oversight?
Yep. Again, coming from engineering, you start looking at everything as a system. And like when I moved from just an engineer to managing people and processes in a company, you still kind of think that, okay, company is your product, right? So you need to understand how it works. Then you just make this mental exercise and you see how will this product behave at scale. And then you take all the sales projections and everything to see what load you'll be getting, how many invoices you'll be generating, how many clients you'll be having. And like every company is completely different. But the principles that you're looking at the nearest things that will break and then kind of looking a bit into the future to understand what will break next. So like as a generic advice, I'd say rely on first principles, think, and then like go on a bit more practical. Let's say you're generating 1 invoice per month. Do you need to automate that? Kind of far from it. You don't need that. If, for example, on the other side, you're getting, I don't know, 100 plumbers doing something, and each of them generates 20 checks daily, you do need an automation there. And there are like wonderful, there are some wonderful systems which allow you to automate expenses right away. So basically, you just analyze where it will hurt more and do that. And like one of ideas to use, one of principles to use is that at the early stage, and I think we're talking about like a rather early stage of startups right now, most likely, unless you're dealing with financial technology, like fintech, which requires compliance and everything, your needs are quite basic. Don't overcomplicate. Just focus on, like, I don't know, you need payment processing, just take something which takes the risk from you and the complexity, like Stripe, for example, start taking payments, be done with it. That's it. Is it fancy? At this point, already not. Does it work? Yes. And same with all the other like areas. I was touching on this kind of unbundledness, that there are many areas you need to cover. And payment processing takes Stripe. Expense processing, expense management. If you have enough volume, go for, I don't know, Plio, or there was this amazing Spanish startup whose name I, of course, forgot. So again, don't overcomplicate and be smart.
I like asking that question of what's going to break first. Vicente, moving on to crypto, do you think crypto can become the native payment layer for autonomous AI agents, and where are we on our road to that?
Yeah, makes sense, because if you consider like AI agents with autonomy, even free will, why not? Then it's more than intelligence. You need a wallet. And we already see interesting projects like Infinity Rooms, who are crypto native, fully on chain, because it's part of the digital, it's part of the history of internet, Fully digital coins with a fully digital agents, makes sense just to be on that. And at the end, I have one AI agents who are recovering all the brand new properties in Coastal Sol, Dubai, whatever. I have another AI agents who are in charge of all the payments in crypto. Makes sense they have to talk each other. And the end, right now, the only way that we have is just to have a wallet. I know that Visa is on the move. We want to be part of the business, but eventually makes sense, that crypto native is going to be part of from the beginning.
And how do you see tokenization and digital asset models influencing the next wave of startup funding or operations?
Yeah, we really are there. We're in the middle of a kind of bull market, quite weird this time because we have, instead of the other cycles, we already have 1 million coins already. All the attention is divided between all the different coins. It's a different animal right now. However, what is tokenization? I consider tokenization the way to digitalize a real-world asset or put in a digital channel, in a virtual channel, and start operating with that. And from that perspective, very interesting for projects to get funding because it's fast. It's blue ocean, you get a new category of investors, the crypto bros sometimes, a little bit gamblers at that sense, but from the retail. And also accredited investors, you also can take from these Web3 VCs. And what I see tokenization part of the new models of financing, like an hybrid model, it's important just to know that tokenization is not going to kill the VC, but it's going to enhance how they operate.
Peter, in your work, can you share an example of how financial workflow automation, if we go back to that, especially with LLMs and AI, how it transforms operations in companies that you work with or companies that maybe want to consider implementing that?
Yeah, we can definitely see if you look across the financial landscape on the investor side that there's a huge interest around Gen AI and automating various workflows. I would say it's, of course, if you look at the quant side, which is where we came from, they've always been about automation. So I would say that Gen AI is making more waves in what you would call the discretionary space, where you have humans in the loop that ends up making the final investment decisions. And as part of those processes, especially when you make investments, you do it based on information. So you're trying to gather an information edge and then make decisions based on that information. So where we are seeing a lot of interest is trying to automate that information gathering process, right? So trying to figure out how do you actually try to build a system that emulates how a financial analyst would think. So one example that where we have worked with clients is to create agents or agentic workflows that would follow something like a chain of thought type approach. Or today I would say people probably refer to it more like deep research, where you try to map out the different steps that would be required and try to automate as much of those steps as possible, but still trying to keep a certain structure. So for instance, you might, as an investor, say, I want to understand what companies are investing in AI solutions for revenue generation or operational efficiency. I'm interested in investing in those companies. And then, of course, the starting point would be, what does AI solution even mean, right? And this is an area where large language models can be super powerful because they can help you automate that process of coming up with definitions. So you might start thinking about, how can I create a mind map? Okay, AI solutions can be machine learning applications. It can be natural language processing. It can be different sort of things that you could break it down, image processing and so on. And underneath there, it can be, predictive maintenance. It could be sentiment analysis and so on. So now you have sort of a framework built for you, right? And then you sort of take a next step, and this is sort of a real use case, right? Where you would say, I need a retrieval system, because it's not just a matter of speaking to a large language model. In fact, you don't really want to do that because they tend to hallucinate. So you want to control what you feed it in the context window, in the prompting in some sense. And that's where you sort of go into this garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. So you need to feed it relevant content, premium news or transcripts and so on. And then you start to say, okay, who are actually talking about AI solutions within that mind map that I created, right? So I do a multi-threaded retrieval. So I do a lot of searches at the same time. Think about it as a bunch of Google searches in some sense, retrieving content, feeding it to a large language model. But then actually using the large language model again to say, verify the results for me. Are you really talking about this or not? And now you sort of structure the content on the fly such that you can start to plot it and make automated even decision making if you wish, or put pictures in front of a human and getting the patterns that might trigger some investment decision. But it's all happening automatically in a matter of minutes, instead of you spending potentially hours, days, weeks on getting the same information.
Yeah, I mean, they say data is power. What they don't say is that data also takes a lot of time. So what's exciting about AI is that it allows us to process that at a much faster rate if we know how to do it really well. Now, it was kind of touched upon very briefly, but it seems like AI is being integrated into like any new startup or company that's coming up. Ivan, in your experience, what would you advise to early stage startups in terms of deciding which Fintech or AI-powered tools are worth adopting to avoid complicating their tech stack too soon?
It kind of goes along the same lines, just don't overcomplicate, right? But in general, like AI, yeah, is everywhere, right? It's just everywhere that you're asking, an investor asking, like, do you use AI? Do you use, like, yes, like, of course, but I'd say whatever you automate there, so you still need to have good data, and basically it just rhymes with what Peter just said. Like, you need to get good data, you need to use AI to analyze and get some structured version of it, make sure you're not having any hallucinations, and then just make a decision based on top of it. So, like I had this case, I was researching just recently, my current company, we're building a loyalty-powered fintech, and we have kind of near gambling engagement mechanism, and we're about to launch in Saudi Arabia. And it kind of makes it like nearly legal. And I was making a huge research on like what's allowed, what's not, because there are ways to make it compliant with the Sharia law. And like I spent almost full day. I had like a maybe document for 50 pages just to read through, analyze, and just work with it. Then the other day in the morning I start reading, and then I just start Googling companies it gave me. Like, this company doesn't exist. this company doesn't exist, this company doesn't exist. And then I just like ask, hey, you told me. Oh, no, I didn't. No, there is this company, it's not there. So it's just an example of that we need to be very careful to see what's worth integrating, meaning like AI that will solve things for you, no, it won't, at least at this point, yet. So we need to be very careful. And AI is there to help, but we need to be just mindful and still keep people at helm. That's what I say.
Nearly illegal. I like, Vicente, how many times have you told your clients that something is nearly illegal? Before we finish the session, if you were to give one piece of advice to a founder looking to future-proof their company from a tech perspective, specifically fintech infrastructure, what would be your top advice, Vicente? Why don't we start with you?
Yeah, my advice is go fast for a startup is good, grow is good, but go fast and compliance is awesome. That's it.
Don't fear compliance. Yeah, when I was managing operations, our legal counsel was my favorite, and I'm sure they loved hearing from me every time we talked to them. Peter, what do you think?
I would say the same thing. I mean, if you start, and it's been mentioned a couple of times on the panels today, I mean, get your stuff out there, start getting real client feedback, especially because we are working in a space that is evolving quickly. So if you keep waiting for it to be perfect, the market has already moved and you haven't really learned anything, instead of you having to start all over and integrate new tooling, right? So get out there and try to see if, solve real problems and react to the feedback you get.
Ivan?
And I'll be on the cautionary side then. Like, be very cautious when don't follow shiny things. Like,
I agree with that as well.
At least evaluate risks, including compliance risks. Because like everybody's running around with this vibe code and that one man can just build everything and that you can just code with AI, you don't need developers. Like secret, still you do.
That was why I said solve real problems. The other stuff is just...
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the thing. Like there are in founders' mindset, when you are on creativity and you see something new and cool, and you say, okay, this is 10x better than before. If it's the first solution of that kind, it might be just work in 95% of cases, and then 5% gets you to jail. So
that's what we have Vicente for. So we don't go to jail.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Okay, we're going to open it to the audience if there are any questions. Yeah, let's go over there because I know she wanted to ask something earlier on.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. My main question, and I think a lot of people can maybe relate to this, because Europe is quite regulated when it comes to AI solutions. And I believe, as Peter already mentioned, right now, what's really future-proof is building ecosystems, because we already have the tools. And so there is a lot of layers and dimensions to it, coming from a company where we focus more on personal growth, so more of a human aspects, like identity and so on. Do you see a threat in there if a company chooses to start it in Europe? Whereas, for example, in the United States, you might have so much more potential to scale this. What is your opinion on that?
I would say, first of all, regulation is not always bad. Actually, there are opportunities in that too, right? I come from Denmark, and we have regulated a lot on sort of sustainable stuff, and they build a business on that, right? Windmill business and all this sort of stuff. So there are definitely opportunities in regulation. But yes, when you are in a space that is moving quickly, very quickly, then regulation can surely be a hindrance, right? But often what you will see is that regulators will always be a little bit behind of where the market is. And that's where you sometimes have to accept taking a little risk and sort of just go after it, but always keeping an eye on how regulation sort of catches up and adjusts for that. And I think they're probably a little better at that in the US, also because they're often more funded, well-funded, so they can run faster. They have a different mindset in terms of how they fund businesses than we do in Europe, where we are a little bit more cautious. But yeah, I mean, it's a balance. It's a balance. Yeah.
Everybody's looking at me.
Yes.
Only if you have something to add.
It's a legal
I'm a European lawyer for a long time here, but to be honest, there's things that I don't like it already. There's a lot of bureaucracy here. We put in the medal that we are world champion into regulation. That's good. I don't think that's good. At the same time, we have a lack of, we don't have a really capital market. That's why all the companies that are growing, they go to the US, to be honest. All the people are there. But mostly because of we have a minor capital market here. We're still growing. I hope the things are changed. I think regulation is good at some point at the institutional level if you go into Series A. But for small companies already at the beginning, could be also problematic. And it's a question to keep the balance. Maybe you want to go faster, go to the US. And then if you grow to Series C, B, once the capital markets really develop here, come back, get your stamp, and grow worldwide.
Yeah. Live in the country is always an option, right? But like in regulation, let's say there is like clearly lit area, gray area, and dark area. So obvious advice, dark area, don't go there. If it's clearly forbidden, just don't jump in there. If it's clearly lit, maybe you're not risky enough. And in the gray area, like I really love this example from the book called Innovation Stack about how Square founders were presenting their swiping solution, and there was like this small white block that was connecting through the audio jack to the iPhone, and they showed how they use a card to swipe and take a transaction in front of a MasterCard executive. And this guy is literally, guys, you just violated maybe 3 regulations from our side. And they're like standing shocked because it's either like they survive or not. And basically, okay, he says, fine, like we'll have to cancel those because this is really cool. So when you operate in gray area, this is what Fintech does right now. It finds gray areas where regulation, the areas which regulation didn't have a chance to cover yet. Come there, get 200,000 customers, and then regulators are like, I cannot forbid that immediately. And then you start talking, there may be some courts, but you will push through and you will work with the regulator. So regulator is not a law, it's it's close to law, but you can fight back and like agree on something. Like if you see actual value, you will be able to push through.
It's about being nearly illegal, as you said before.
And also you have in Europe that we call the sandbox, would be an interesting way just to get a temporary license. It's inexpensive. It's just to go to one of the regulators in Europe, and then you get passporting for the other state members. Will be a good move as well.
But I think generally having good lawyers are probably important here, right? Because you need someone to help you interpret the gray areas, right? And understand where is it okay to take risk, where is regulation likely to take you, so you can take some risks in areas that perhaps are more safe than others, right? Not everything is created equal there.
Just don't hire lawyers on day one. You lose all your money.
I said find a good lawyer.
Lawyers. Watch out.
Works for you.
Maybe a follow-up question, if that fits in the time frame. So the gray area for us is a little bit of a profiling. So the main idea is for the AI to get to know the person on various personality levels. And so, yeah, legally we're doing a little bit of profiling, and I know people are a little bit scared and don't want all of their information to be exposed. So it's not about financial stuff. But then you see it's a little bit difficult to assess the gray areas there, And so in one answer, yes or no, I know I'm pushing you a little bit. Do you think we should stay in Europe or should we go to the States?
It really depends on the application, because if you go to in the financial sector, there's profiling all over. GPDR and all of that, that's all about profiling, right? And figuring out if you're a suitable match for a particular financial instrument. So I wouldn't say that it's a bad thing to be in Europe, but you really need to see what the application is for it, right? If it is making some decision and excluding some people, not to protect them, but just because you, for some other reason. I was about to say if you don't want their risk, but that's not even a good situation, because banks are doing that all the time as well, whether you're going to get a loan or not, right? So it's really, in order to say whether you should go to the US or not, really depends on how you're going to apply your profiling.
I don't think it's really ever like that black and white. What my Xbox used to say, sometimes it's easier to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. But don't take that as legal advice. But you know, being in startups, you know, it's a risky ecosystem. You know, it's a spectrum of that. So because it's such a spectrum of risk and opportunity, I don't think there's ever like a very clear, you know, black or white answer to things like that, especially when it comes to, you know, regulation and legal frameworks, even though that might seem counterintuitive.
I would say one thing here is, I don't think profiling itself is bad, as long as you then link it to data that ends up, so for me, profiling is just a way of representing a person in a set of features. And then that could go into a model that you train on some data, right? And saying, with these features, you have a tendency of having this outcome. I mean, that should be objective, right? In some sense, because it's trained on data. And then as a business, it should be okay for you to make decision-making based on what common features are, right?
Just predictions.
Yeah. All right, we'll take one more question, and then the rest of you can ask your questions at the networking right after this. Are there more questions? Yeah, over there. Okay.
Guys, you were talking about profiling. And as a matter of fact, in Fintech, profiling, when you are trying to understand, depending on the product of the Fintech you are creating, you are trying to understand that possible customer. From your perspective, at which point AI advancing so fast becomes a liability on fraudsters trying to wind their money from your fintech? Let's say you have a credit fintech, you have a risk assessment fintech or something like this. At which point AI becomes more a liability than a helpful kind of situation?
I mean, I think you have to accept that. I mean, AI is a very broad term here, right? But apply the right technology at the right problems, and not every problem is best solved with AI or machine learning. So it becomes a reliability if you think that everything should be solved with AI and machine learning, right? Figure out what is the best approach to solving your problem and then go with that. And don't try to sell it as AI and machine learning, right? There's a term now that is called AI washing, right? Just like you have greenwashing. Don't do that. Be real and just tell it how it is, because the ones who really know about the advantages and disadvantages of AI will also see through you if you try to oversell on the AI side. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, from my side, I'm on AI in fintech specifically. Unfortunately, right now there is a race, us versus them, like normal fintech companies versus fraudsters, and everybody's trying to use AI from both sides just to trick the other one. So, like, you cannot really stay away from AI in fintech right now. This is where it's heading to, and like very simply, generating forged documents. Like really easy. There was just this morning I read about this guy. He generated with the latest GPT image generator. He generated a passport image, which would work. Like really. So it's easy to generate documents right now. It's easy to generate even a 3D. Like you know, everybody went through some financial onboarding. Like roll your head, like look at this, yell at your phone or something, and like you can replicate all of this in AI right now. So systems on fintech, they are forced to use AI to battle that. And like talking about profiling specifically, there is kind of this company called Cerdine. I think they're US based. What they're doing, they're providing a small SDK that's built into your app, into your web application. And then when people are using it, it just gets like a crazy number of data points. Was the password typed in or just pasted? Did the person do some clicks super fast as fraudster? He knows he does this 50 times per day, or it was a normal person, just boom. And like they're using this, and then you're making profiles, and then using AI to understand if this person is a fraudster or not. So like, will it be a liability? Like maybe yes, maybe no, but you can cannot walk away from this. That's the answer.
All right, we're gonna end there. Thank you so much to our last panelists. I'm gonna let them go. I'm gonna say just a few last words, and then we're just gonna, enjoy the food that we have.
Thank you.